call the Thursday, February 5th, 2026 Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order at 7:01. Is there a, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? I would like to ask for a motion to change the agenda to move item E3, ELA update K5, to the first slot ahead of our budget deliberations.
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? See what's on my mind? Let's go. Just be done with it, right? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Lori. Is there a second? Thank you, Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Comments from the public. The board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. The board considers the views of citizens in its deliberations and welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board listens to public comment thoughtfully and with interest. The board, however, generally does not respond to public comment during board meetings by offering commentary or answering questions. The board also invites commentators and the public to contact the board or the superintendent directly with any specific questions or comments. The board, through the chair and the superintendent, may respond to questions and comments offered during public comment or shared directly, and in responding may also direct members of the public to the appropriate staff member for a response. Are there any comments from the public?
No.
Thank you. Consent agenda. On the consent agenda are the minutes from the BOE regular meeting of January 8th, the BOE workshop of the 15th, the Business Operations Committee meeting of January 15th, the BOE workshop of January 22nd, and the BOE workshop of January 29th. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion, questions?
No.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Board chair's report. I just want to welcome everybody. We survived that first round of snow and we're well into budget season, although it may never go away. On January 5th, Kevin presented his proposed fiscal year 27 budget. Since then we've held three budget workshops where each cost center discussed the budget requests and priorities and answered board questions. Board members also submitted written questions and information requests. Those questions and answers were documented and are publicly available with tonight's board meeting materials and will also be on the website. During tonight's meeting, we will recap the workshops and questions and further deliberate. There will be a joint meeting with the Board of Finance on February 10th, which is next Tuesday. Slated to begin at 7 o'clock, and location is still be to determine whether it'll be here or over at Comstock, but most likely here, and we'll get that information out to you by end of day tomorrow. Our final deliberations and a budget vote is scheduled for February 26th at our regular meeting. Throughout the budget process, the board relies on stakeholder input, and we invite and welcome public participation. The budget documents, including Kevin's presentation, the budget book, class size report, enrollment report, and projections, and also that question document are available on the website. And we ask that if you have any thoughts or comments or questions to please email the board at boe@wiltonps.org. The Board of Finance has a special meeting scheduled for February 19th and a regular meeting scheduled for March 10th. The public hearing on the BOE budget is scheduled for March 25th, and that's always at 7 o'clock at Middlebrook. The Board of Finance has set its budget deliberation meeting dates for April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd as necessary, and bonding projects will be presented at the BOF regular meeting scheduled for April 7th. The deadline for the BOF to recommend a budget to the annual town meeting is April 15th. And the fiscal year 2027 annual town meeting is set for Tuesday, May 5th, with adjourned voting following the meeting on Saturday, May 9th. I'd also like to note that last night, the Wilton Capital Planning Committee came to consensus recommendations for the Board of Selectmen on bonded capital projects. Of the 14 possible projects, the BOE projects were ranked number 1 through 5 and 7, and include moving forward with the standard roof replacement schedules and Middlebrook improvements and cider mill envelope work. Finally, I would also just like to take a minute to thank Kevin and his staff for all their hard work getting to guidance and helping us through our questions and deliberations. I don't want to discount the choices made and the requests deferred to arrive at where we are, successfully balancing cost with opportunity and performance. So thank you for your hard work. It's 2 years now that we've managed to come into guidance, and I know that saying that sometimes rolls off the tongue, and we forget the work that goes behind it and the choices that are made and the deliberations to get there. And so I just want to thank everybody at the table and behind the scenes that, all of our goals is really, what's best for kids. And we work really hard together to all try to get there. So thank you.
Great, thanks. Thank you. I have 3 items. First, we haven't been together in this setting since Middlebrook had its science fair, and so I'd like to congratulate Jory, all of those students who participated, the staff who supported them, the families who supported the kids that participated. It was really just another high watermark type of event. I had a couple of observations as I was visiting last night and chatting when I was there and chatting with kids. One, I think we had greater participation this year than I was seeing in recent years. And 2, the level of sophistication in the research questions kids were posing was uniformly high. There was many outstanding projects. One caught my eye. That project was entitled Malnutrition on the Human Brain and Body, put together by 2 8th graders, Justinia Felinsky and Taylor Henning. So after meeting with them that night, I was immediately thinking that they needed to be in front of Senator Cece Marr, who represents us and chairs the children on the Committee on Children at the State House. And so that happened today. And so Cece, very graciously carved out 45 minutes before running up to the Capitol to spend time and hear their presentation. If you're following the governor's proposals, he is proposing again free, funding free breakfast and lunch for all Connecticut children. There was quite an obvious tie-in here, and so Senator Marr is hoping that when this committee holds public hearing, these 2 young ladies will come up and testify in front of the committee. And so, we'll try to facilitate that happening later on in the springtime. But really terrific work all the way around. And they, like their peers, were just exceptional in the quality of the research and certainly in the quality of their presentation. I mentioned it to Maria as well. Maria chairs our local nutrition committee, and she said, "When can we see them?" And so make that happen also, probably before they get to go testify up in Hartford. So
Good practice run.
it is, and they've just they've got a lot of ideas and some very practical ideas to particularly in thinking of how we engage with Chartwells and how we might better promote students here making better, more nutritional choices as they're working through our lunch lines. So that was a real high point. I wanted to share with you. We reviewed some of the town budget when it was published earlier this week, and we noted a discrepancy in our budget we contribute $30,000 to offset part of Jeff Pardo's salary. In the selectmen budget, that line was at 50, and so I wrote to them last night. We'll be able to speak with Tony tomorrow when we meet at noon, and just ask them to make the correction. And then the last piece. When we were together earlier this year, and I presented to you the proposals for the bonding proposals for addressing various pieces of our building, I suggested that we look for some project management guidance, and so today Lori, Ruth, and I met with Collier's project management leadership group, two of the representatives who are currently working across the border in Weston. I think they had been in Darien. They're also working in Westport, and so that conversation was really, really insightful, and I kind of feel committed, whether it's Collier's or somebody else, buying some expertise to help guide these processes, I think is going to be very important for us. And just in an hour-long conversation, they reminded me of all the things that we don't know about how intricate this process is, specifically when, you're looking for state reimbursement for bonds. And so you have some thoughts you want to share, but it was a very productive conversation.
And it was just extremely enlightening because we sit at the table and we talk about doing projects or what we would like our buildings to look like, but what it actually takes to get there is just a completely different world and a different process than I've ever encountered or been involved with, and even just different from just facilities maintenance, just a general kind of upkeep world. And when we're talking about committing the types of resources that we are thinking of and that we need as a town, it's really important that you measure twice and cut once. So I think this fills a gap that will be welcome for everybody as we get going on these things, and also just build confidence around where we want to go and how we get there.
Does this just helps with the process, or does help with the money that maybe the state potentially would contribute, or all of that?
Yeah, the entire process, and these guys can speak to it, but what they'd like to begin with districts really at the strategic planning phase, and with all of the resource and expertise they have, they kind of help you scope out what your project is. Look at all of the, various considerations that might be part of that, help you walk through the considerations of how you set up, bond proposals and phase it. And then, again, if you're looking at pursuing state reimbursement, that's a pretty Byzantine and complicated process.
Yeah,
and so
I'm
they
sure.
have a lot of expertise there too. And
So this is another layer on top of Eric Kyer's. So this would be Eric Kyer, and then this would be the
yeah,
next
I
layer.
would consider it almost project management, right? So
Yeah.
they're considered like an owner's rep. So they work and advocate on behalf. At the early stage, would be the Board of Education, and if we, with a project got to any point where it's kind of handed over the town through a building committee, then at that point the town would have to decide if they wanted to continue with this kind of partnership or take it on differently.
Yeah, sounds like a wonderful idea though. Yeah.
But what was enlightening to me is if you don't set it up right up front, then you can lose opportunities
Right.
down the line in terms of like state reimbursement or setting yourself up for a productive, well-managed, and efficient project.
Right.
And so laying that groundwork, it's just much more intricate than I had envisioned. Well, keep researching and looking forward to that.
That's all I have.
Oh, okay. Committee updates. It's been a while since we had committee updates at the table. So I know that policy has met and business operations have met. The last time policy met was on December 19th. And at that meeting, it was Kevin and myself. We called to order a little after 6 o'clock. We reviewed and discussed 5 different policies. One is educational opportunities for military children, which you'll see as a first read on tonight's agenda. The second one that we looked at was school library materials. We reviewed that policy. We did put it on tonight's agenda, but after further reflection, I'll make a motion later to table it, that it still needs a little bit of cleanup and legal review and an appendix. We looked at parental access to curriculum materials, and that needs additional revision and legal review before it comes to this table. We looked at policy 6148, completion rates of the free application for student aid FAFSA. This is coming from a state legislative requirement. Our policy still tracks the state legislative requirements and is in effect. So we decided to keep it as it stands. Then we looked at policy 514412, challenging behavior prevention. We reviewed it again, and it is back on our agenda tonight for our second read under discuss and approve, and it tracks required legislative language. And we adjourned a little bit at 7 o'clock. Business operations?
Yes. Patrick and I are members of the Business Operations Committee, along with Kevin, and 2 members from the Board of Finance, Kim Healy and Prasad Iyer. We've met twice. Our first meeting was on January 15th at 7:30 a.m. And Kevin presented the superintendent's proposed budget and gave the Board of Finance opportunity to ask questions. That was the crux of that meeting. Patrick, unless you got something else. And then today we met at 7:30 to discuss a number of items. The 2027 superintendent's budget we looked at again, though it was much more brief. We talked about the Board of Ed bonded capital, which Ruth had mentioned, as to where our priorities laid. And we also talked about contracted services that were up pending, which are phones, the school nurse contract, and copiers. And Kevin, we feel that there's going to be a save on the whole nursing agreement as it's going to go out to RFP. And then last but not least, we talked about the van purchase proposal, which the second van, which we've talked about quite a few times, and that Kevin presented the documents that represented a $30,000 save by utilizing that and consolidating some runs. And that was our second meeting.
Thank you very much. Any questions for myself or Lori on the committee updates?
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Now we'll move into the ELA, correct? ELA update, K through 5, and Karen and friends are going to join us at the table. Rosemary and Sue, thank you. Lovely to see you tonight.
Thanks for having us. Hi, everybody.
Welcome back.
Thanks. All right, so we're here tonight to share a kindergarten through 5th grade update on the implementation of the EL education curriculum. I'm going to bring you, I have some data points scattered throughout my evidence-based observations, so I'm going to be pretty text dependent. I promise you that the colleagues I brought with me are very talented and will add all of the color and experiential stuff for you if you just hang with me for a few minutes. This is Rosemary Rich. She's our very talented humanities coach at Miller Driscoll, and this is Susanna Prada, one of our humanity coaches at Cider Mill. Our primary goal this year has been to create a systematic transition from learning to read to reading to learn. And we have a lot to celebrate in that vein. We're seeing a lot of student agency in our work. Students are taking ownership of their expertise that they're learning in modules, in knowledge block, as well as they're very highly invested in the high quality work in both skills and all block. We're seeing so much vocabulary in context. Kids are using Tier 1 and Tier 2 domain-specific vocabulary, academic vocabulary, not only in the classroom, but at recess. Earlier in the fall, one fifth grade class resolved a conflict in the cafeteria referring to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by section. And
That's pretty cool.
and all of our students are engaging with the same high-quality text to promote grade-level thinking, and that's been really exciting to watch. We're also very proud of the elevated roles our teachers are stepping into beyond facilitating tasks and now facilitating inquiry. That's also been just a delight to see. At Miller Driscoll, we're seeing a significant lift with our youngest learners. In kindergarten, we saw a 12% jump in proficiency compared to this time last year. It's important to remember that our kindergartners take the winter map. It's their first assessment of the year. So this isn't a growth comparison. We're comparing that proficiency rate to the proficiency rate of a different group of children last year. But it's encouraging nonetheless. This tells us that the foundational skills component of EL is hitting the mark. Our first grade results are particularly extraordinary. Not only did proficiency rise to 83% this winter, but as a cohort, our first graders are growing at a rate of 225% of the growth projection met. That means that they're growing at a rate of they're on track to grow at a rate of about 2.25 years. So that's very exciting for us. This demonstrates that the curriculum is not just accessible, but it's also accelerating learning across the board. Our Year 2 implementation efforts, that would be for second grade and third grade, have really been aimed at facilitating some cross-building collaboration, getting into each other's classrooms and examining practices that will grow across years for kids. All 3 grades at Cider Mill are tracking to make more than a year's worth of growth this year. At the 3-5 level, we're seeing the impact of the EL modules, the deep dive units where students become experts on specific topics. 5th grade is leading the way with 78% proficiency this winter, as measured by the NWEA map. They're showing particular strength in navigating complex informational texts, which is a core component of the EL education curriculum. 86% of our 5th grade ELA classrooms are tracking to make between 1.5 years and 3 years worth of growth this year, so it's quite impressive. Where we're really seeing the fruits of our labor in grade 4 is with vocabulary. With a 74% proficiency in this domain, our students are not just reading words, they're building the specialized language needed for complex academic work. This is a critical foundation for the deeper research projects that they will experience across grades in the EL modules. Grade 3 proficiency has been anchored a bit by the independent reading proficiency that students came in with. Our beginning of the year DIBELS data indicated that about 1/3 of the grade level had substantial unsecured phonics learning. The 3rd grade curriculum expects this learning to be secured for most students. With the teacher boot camp led by another talented humanities coach at Cider Mill, Lisa Riley, 3rd grade teachers learned to implement the grade 2 phonics curriculum, and as a result, 3rd grade teachers were able to increase the number of students demonstrating success with their foundational skills to 77% as of the middle of the year DIBELS window, which closes tomorrow. We are building momentum, though, in the middle of the year DIBELS window, which again closes tomorrow. 84% of this year's second graders are on track to secure the alphabetic code by the end of the year. So we're in a much better place this year as we move into year 3 of implementation. The NWEA data also helps us pinpoint where we can lean in. In grade 2, we're really paying close attention to the transition between the NWEA K2 assessment and the NWEA 2.5 assessment. This is a critical year where the reading to learn shift happens. We're using this data to provide targeted interventions in language comprehension to ensure no student falls behind during that bridge year. Grade 2 is a pivotal bridge as students transition from foundational decoding to deep comprehension. To ensure we're measuring their progress accurately, we are reevaluating our criteria for when students move from the K2 assessment to the 2-5 NWEA assessment. Historically, we've relied on the previous guidance from NWEA, which was students would be ready to move to the 2-5 assessment when they hit the 190 RIT score. That's like a growth chart for kids. No matter their age, it tells us what they're capable of reading independently. New guidance from NWEA was published last February, however, so we're shifting our approach a bit. Rather than a single RIT score, we will look at the NWEA recommended RIT in conjunction with the DIBELS data. By using DIBELS as a primary indicator of a student's readiness to read independently, we can more confidently move more students to the 2-5 assessment. This allows us to capture a more accurate picture of their progress within the EL curriculum and with grade level standards, and to ensure our interventions are precisely targeted to their needs. So overall, the data suggests that the implementation is working. We're feeling pretty successful at the moment. We aren't just seeing typical growth. In many pockets, we're seeing aspirational growth, ambitious growth. However, data only tells part of the story. While these MAP scores provide a quantitative temperature check for our progress, the true impact of the EL education is best seen in the daily interactions between our teachers and our students. To understand how these numbers translate into actual literacy habits, how our students are grappling with complex ideas and finding their voices as writers, I've asked the instructional coaches to bring some anecdotes forward. They spend their days in our classrooms side by side with the teachers, and they can provide the color to fill in kind of the gaps in this aerial overview that I've given you. So I'm going to pass it off to Rosemary. You want to fill us in on Miller Driscoll?
Absolutely, happy to. Thanks for having me. Okay, so one of our most high leverage instructional practices for both decoding or reading and encoding or spelling is called syllable sleuth. And of course, because we're a pre-K to 2 school, we have to make everything joyful and engaging. So we utilize tools like little magnifying glasses. We talk about what a sleuth is. We get some vocabulary in, even just the name of the instructional practice. And what's great about this instructional practice is that students are using their knowledge of the 6 syllable types. Don't worry, I won't quiz you later, but maybe this would be on your A game. There are 6 different syllable types, and it helps students to be able to read words that they don't know automatically, as well as write words that they don't know automatically. So we teach them this practice of looking for the vowels, marking them, looking for the consonants in between. There's a whole lot I can go into that I will spare you from at this moment, but we teach them how to do this so that, again, if they're coming to a multisyllabic word that they don't know automatically, they're able to read them and decode them, and then, of course, use the same technique to help them write them. So they rely on what they learn about principles of syllable division to go ahead and read and write these words, and they become pretty empowered to do it. So I'm going to give you a little example. Okay, follow me with your eyes. Okay, I'm going to put a word up. Naturally, you know it, but don't say anything. I'll say it to you like I say to the students. If you want me to know you know it, you can give me a thumbs up. I work with pre-K to 2. Humor me. Follow with your eyes and not with your body. I just can't help it. I love it. Okay, so if a first or second grader, or kindergartner for that matter, didn't know this word, the instructional practice would have them look for the vowels and mark them. Some people do 2 dots under the vowel. Some people do a V for, vowel. Doesn't really matter. And then they look to see how many consonants are in between the vowels. Now, the rule is, and again, I won't get into the minutia about it, if there are 2 consonants in between the 2 vowels, you first attempt to split the word in between those 2 consonants. So of course, I have my 2 consonants. I apologize if you can't see it well. And then we would teach the kids, okay, now read this word. Now, because they've learned the principles of syllable division, they would know how to attempt this word first. Because there's a consonant closing in that vowel, this is a closed syllable, which means the vowel is going to make its short sound. And if you're not familiar with that, I will say it in this. So then the kids will say, okay, this part is dis. I know it's not dice because the consonant after the vowel is indicating to me that I need to try the short vowel sound first. And then when they look here, they're going to say, oh, actually, this is a vowel team. And I know the AY together makes the A sound. So therefore, I know that this syllable or part says may, and then they can go ahead and put the whole word together. So again, for us, we don't have to think about such things, but when you're a kindergarten, first or second grader who's learning how to read and write multisyllabic words, this is really impactful and effective. And again, there are 6 different syllable types, so there's kind of a lot of criteria that goes into this, but this is just one example, and I'll give you another example. I'll write it
So
bigger.
explain the short vowel between 2 consonants. How did they figure that out?
So if there are 2 consonants in between 2 vowels or vowel teamed or architectural vowel, any kind of vowel pattern, the rule is to try and split the syllable, meaning the part, right? This is the first part of the word. And I know that I'm going to try the I sound for I as opposed to I because the consonant is there and the consonant closes in that vowel sound. Some people say it closes the door. The point is it's called a closed syllable type, and a hallmark of a closed syllable type is it's going to have a short vowel sound. So I'm going to read it that way. Now here, this word isn't as friendly maybe, right? There's only 1 consonant in between the 2 vowels. So again, students would mark those vowels and they're going to say, oh, now there's only 1 consonant in between the vowels. What am I to do? Don't worry, they know because we teach them. So they're going to try this first. They're going to try splitting the word in between the first vowel and the first consonant. And what this does is make this an open syllable type, meaning the vowel is going to make its long sound. So instead of ah, it's going to say o. So they're going to say, okay, chances are this part is ro. And then I know this part is bot because again, it's a closed syllable because a consonant is there making the O say it's a short sound. So I have an open syllable, I have a closed syllable, and now I can read the word robot, okay?
Wow.
And there's a lot that goes
That's
into it.
amazing.
And
That's just amazing.
when you go into classrooms, you will literally see and hear kids syllable sleuthing it up. I've made that a word. So, don't judge me too
They
much.
tap it out, they sleuth it out, they do all the
Absolutely
things.
do. And again, there's more strategy and technique to it, but just as like a cursory overview. And you'll go in and kids will be using it. And then we teach the kids, don't worry, because I know you're talking about budget. We say, okay, but you can't really write in a book. So here's what you do. Like you can use your fingers and you can cover part. And then they use this to help them. And it's really impactful. It's really effective. Most of the kids across the grades are pretty proficient at it at any level. And then they certainly are able to help their peers. And then you can do some kind of reverse work to help you with it on the encoding side. And they really like it. So that's one of our high leverage strategies to help with decoding and encoding. And then another portion of our skills block, which addresses foundational skills, is centers. So the kids are in small groups based on data, and they rotate around through 4 different centers. And the centers are writing, fluency, AIR or independent reading with some accountable elements to that, and then word work or word study. And so the kids move around to these different centers and they're collaborating, they're actively thinking, they're engaged, and all in service of working on the phonetic skills that they need to master, both on the decoding side and on the encoding side. And this also includes high frequency words. So the kids love that. And oftentimes when the slide comes up indicating where the kids are going to go rotating through their centers that day, there's like a yes in the room because they're excited about which center they're going to first. And then conversely, there's also because I wanted to go to X center first. But they love it because they're purposefully engaged and it allows them to have a lot of repeated deliberate practice. And then on the knowledge block side, which is, where we work on speaking and listening, reading comprehension, vocabulary, and a couple of other things, vocabulary is a really vital element. And students build their background knowledge on a content related to their module, so whether it be humanities-based or STEM-based. And then they utilize read-alouds to build their background knowledge. And vocabulary comes up in those read-alouds. And students have multiple opportunities to be exposed to both domain-specific vocabulary, academic vocabulary, and then they're able to show their knowledge of employing that vocabulary in a variety of different settings, which is a great aspect of the program. So whether they're, having partner talk or a little science talk where they're talking with a small group of their peers around a particular topic they're learning about, they also write using these words. And again, you hear it kind of across the day. So there are multiple opportunities and we're really seeing it show up. They even take notes sometimes during the interactive read aloud, and oftentimes, especially in K and 1, the kids will sketch for their notes, but then we encourage them to label as well. And we're seeing kids use the vocabulary pertaining to the topic. So in first grade recently, they were learning about sun, moon, and stars, and they were learning about phases of the moon. And so gibbous and waxing and waning, among a host of other terms, were in there. And, it is first grade, so kids are approximating, and they're like the gibbous phase, or but again, they're trying to command that vocabulary. They know what it means. They're just working on the pronunciation. And then in second grade recently, one of the books that they were reading in their current module about rights for all abilities had a metaphor in it, and it referred to a character as a kaleidoscope. And then as the sentence went on, it said they were a tangle of colors. And so obviously that's more on the academic side, and students were recognizing metaphors across the day over the next couple of days in different settings, even in math. I don't know how that happened, I'm the LA person. But the point is, it's carrying over. So those are some little antidotes to kind of bring some of this to life for you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And now at 3-5, Sue's got some experiences to share as well.
So I'm thrilled to be able to tell you these two stories because I've been telling them to everybody who will listen. So I'm glad that I'm here now sharing them with you. So the two stories I'm going to share with you are cute, but they're not just cute. They're also early indicators of a curriculum that's working. So as I'm telling you this, I just want you to keep that part in mind. So the first one I call the popcorn story. I've titled it. And this one happened in 4th grade, and our 4th graders are in their 2nd year of the program, but our teachers are in their 1st year of implementation. So in this 4th grade classroom, a teacher and I were working on an editing lesson, and there's a segment of the lesson where kids were asked to compare sentences. So there was the first sentence, or the first item they needed to compare were actually 2 independent clauses. So sentence, period, sentence. The second example was same 2 sentences but joined together with a coordinating conjunction. But we didn't tell them that. We just put the 2 examples on the board. And part of the program asked kids to read, think, talk, write. That's the cycle that we use for instruction. And so we just asked, read these 2, and then we want you to think which sample flows better, and why would the author choose one over the other. And so the kids talked it out. And when it came time to share, one student raised his hand. Lots of students raised their hand, but one in particular, we got to him and he said, the second one flows better because the author used a coordinating conjunction to join the sentences, and then he used a comma to separate the ideas. And so at that point, the teacher just looked at me, stopped, looked at me, jaw to the floor, and then she looked at the student and she said, where did you learn that? Because there was nothing on the walls that said coordinating conjunction or definition. That's where we were going with it. And he said, we learned it last year in Mrs. Lemoyne's class. And I call this the popcorn story because when that student said that, another student said, oh yeah. And then another student said, that's right. In so-and-so's class, and it was like watching little kernels of popcorn just expanding across the room. And one after another, the kids were naming teachers, naming when, naming how. They learned about coordinating conjunctions the year previous. And so this story is really the story of like the power of coherence of a program. I taught middle school, and if my middle schoolers, I taught for 20 years, said what that kid said, I would have been so overjoyed. And there's a 4th grader doing this kind of thinking. And it just really illustrates the vertical tower of knowledge that kids are building from year to year, and that it's sticking and it's coming with them, and they're bringing it to the table so that they can deepen their understanding from year to year. So that's my first story. And then my second story, that one happened in knowledge block. This second story happened in all block, and all block is the differentiated portion of the program. It has 5 components. It has reading fluency, grammar usage and mechanics is one station. Additional reading with complex text is another, writing practice, vocabulary and word study, and then AIR, which is accountable independent reading. So in this 5th grade classroom, I was working with a teacher on building student agency and accountable independent reading. And so we just asked them to think and talk about how we could grow as readers in accountable independent reading. When they're reading their own texts, what is the type of thinking work that they could do if they're doing a knowledge block that they could bring to the table with their books. And one student in that space proposed that the class could improve their skills by mining their own texts for complex sentences to create language dives for each other. So just to give you a little background, if you don't know what language dives are, they're really one of the hallmarks of EL education. And a language dive is an instructional routine where usually the teacher has a sentence, they break it up into chunks, and they use an instructional routine where they deconstruct the sentence by part and analyze it for structure, for meaning, and purpose. And then they reconstruct, and they sometimes sort of are playful with it. So they might play a what if game. What if we take this part of the sentence and moved it up here? How does it change the meaning? And in this case, the student thought, well, we could do that with our own books. We could pick select sentences, and then we could do it with our friends. So that student actually inspired the teacher and I to try it out. And so now we're actually trying student-led language dives. So we'll see how that goes. But that story really highlights how the program really empowers kids to be architects of their own learning. When you zoom out a little bit, because these stories are kind of zoomed in, but when you zoom out, just the quality of the work that we are seeing, the teachers and I, when we sit down together to really study either the performance tasks or the assessments, the student work that we're seeing, one of the questions I always ask is, how does this compare to where kids were last year, the work that you'd see last year? And every time, teachers will say things like, kids weren't doing this either at all or not till the end of the year, and we're only in the first half. So I think it just really speaks to how the curriculum's working in the classrooms. And so that's how it's going.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if someone can come up with a good title for that 5th grade story, I'm happy to take it.
Some questions?
Independent architects.
Yes. I'm writing it down. Next time I tell it, it's going to be called Independent Architects.
Any questions?
So I get paid the big bucks, Pam. I just, a general observation, I really, I like these ideas that you've all brought to the table about the power of coherence, especially because we had an ELA curriculum review the other day and talked about moving forward with EL for 6th grade and made the decision to move forward with that next year and to really see kind of like the vertical articulation and integration and progression, I think is really powerful, and that teachers are feeling that too, and there's momentum behind that. And I also like these, the early indicators of a curriculum working, because we are still early in this process. And so there are going to be things that work and things that don't. And being able to come to tables and share what works and what doesn't, and reconfigure how we move forward, and making sure that our staff is supported in a way that pushes things in the right direction, I think is has really been a hallmark of what's been going on over the last couple of months and what I see with you all presenting today. So I think that also is really powerful. And I like that, that calling the map test kind of like a temperature check, that it is, keeping also in mind that while these tests show us and help us move kids to a place that we want them to be, they're also a moment in time, and that also remaining perspective, and in that way having an analytical approach, but also a narrative and holistic approach is something that I find really amazing. That's kind of going on throughout the buildings, because I know doing anything new is not easy and it takes time. And we saw that with the math implementation of the math program as well. But I'm really encouraged that we're having these types of results, and that people are feeling confident and starting to gain momentum around it, because we took a risk,
And sometimes risks are rewarded and sometimes they're not. I mean, it wasn't a blind risk, it was a well thought out risk. But at the same time, we took on something completely, new and different. And so thank you for sharing that with us. I love the popcorn.
I can't underscore enough how hard all of our teachers and our students are working in changing the way that they do school. So that can't be underscored enough. So they're working so hard, and we're very lucky to have the instructional coaches as thought partners for them in this work. So thank you.
And the teachers seem to be enjoying, or at least embracing pieces of it, probably struggle too, but there seems to be some kind of, this is working and this is something that's fun and engaging and we can make this work.
I think any struggle is offset by the work that they're seeing the kids put out. Like every time we look at the work that they put out, every time teachers are just awed. They're in awe of what the kids are doing.
That's great.
So.
Oh, I thought you said they were odd, like unusual.
I mean, this is amazing. Seriously.
So, I mean, my one thought and piece is like I'm listening to you talk about the curriculum and everything, and there's this whole new language and vocabulary that, parents are just completely, I'm a parent, I have, a sixth grader and I have a third grader, and it's the language that they use around things is completely different from when I was taught to read, or even when my eighth grader was taught to read. So there might be something about, providing some type of parental education or guidance along what's going on, because I know if a child came home to me and said, let's do, what would you call it?
Coordinating conjunction?
Well, I mean, that one maybe I could figure it out. But like a language dive, or something like that, I'd be like, how do I help you? The same way, when they changed the way math was done, and I'm like, what do you mean I'll do long division that way? So,
Keep your eyes on Parent Square too, because ahead of every module of how to help at home, letter goes home for caregivers, and it tells you what we're learning, what our guiding questions are, what the answers to those guiding questions are, and some vocabulary.
But even just, like simple like cheat sheets, kind of like, these are, you have one when you use Excel and like how your codes, so I think that to some extent, I think that could go a long way, because then it also keeps parents and kids engaged with each other.
Thank you.
If they share the language.
Yeah, if they share the language. Yeah. And then it also helps teachers be able to communicate with parents about their kids', progress or goals and things like that, if there's a shared vocabulary.
That's a fair point.
It's a good tip.
So I really appreciate the anecdote and the sort of example. Thank you, that was very helpful. I did have one question on the numbers that you presented.
Sure.
Because I heard something about like a map test that didn't go well. The map results you talked through, was that part of that administration, or was that a different one?
Miller Driscoll did
That was
not
only
have
the
the
middle school?
difficulty.
Okay, great. Wonderful. And then the second thing, you mentioned that you're using, you talked about map growth K through 2 versus 2 to 5. Could I just ask, like, some, as the new guy that's still like, what's the distinction there, right? Like how do you decide, which one, since they overlap?
Yeah, it really depends on whether or not the child can read the test independently. Do they have the phonics skills to be able to decode the question, understand the question, as well as the reading stamina to be able to read the passages completely independently?
So I think
As the
you could just take it a step back for him. One reads the questions and the prompts to you, and one doesn't.
that's where I was going next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's the 2-5 test, where the student is required to read the whole thing on their own. There are no earphones, there's no auditory support. The K2 assessment, as the student, as that RIT score, that growth chart, as they move, as they get taller with their reading skills, it's released more and more for them to read. So around the 190, they're pretty much reading most of that test by themselves. And that has been our metric for being ready to move to the test, to the 2-5 test. Last February, NWA revised that guidance, and they said most second graders, with a few exceptions, should be in the 2-5 test. So that's what we're grappling with now.
Got it. When you say grappling with, What does that mean?
what our criteria will be that will indicate that a student is ready to read that test independently without frustrating.
So just another way of looking at it is we're going to assume that most second graders can take the 2 to 5 test. We're going to establish criteria for students who would be accepted from that. One of them would be if their RIT score was below 170 because they wouldn't be able to read the test. Students between 170 and 190, we're going to double check with other measures such as the DIBELS to make a decision whether they would be accepted or not.
And when you make that, is that like a one-time decision at the beginning of the year? Because you're using this test, right, to chart progress.
We would look at every administration to decide what they would do the next administration, correct?
Yeah, the recommendation from NWEA is if in the 2-5 assessment, they earn a RIT score below 270, they probably need to go back to the K2 test. So you do have to, there's a transition there that has to be carefully monitored. And all students in the K2 test, we're looking for growth as we move through the year. So that'll be reassessed ahead of each window.
Got it. But then you said you're grappling with that, meaning that's not what you're doing today, or that is what you're doing today?
It's not what we're doing today, but we're in this new curriculum, so we were looking for what the NWEA recommendation was, not to rely only on a RIT score, but to use curriculum-based measures as well. So we've really been taking a look at which curriculum-based measures we were going to use, and we were kind of waffling between those, but we decided the most objective measure would be the DIBELS, and looking at the composite score as being meets or exceeds benchmark.
Got it. So I mean, and clearly the sort of essence of this is like I'm just trying to figure out, like, as you're assessing, is this curriculum working, and you're seeing these differences between second grade and third grade, like to what extent are the measures comparable through time?
The RIT score transcends those tests, the 6-8 test. So that RIT measure transcends the test
Format.
Thank you. The test format. So it does give us a pretty good indication of where they will be. Adding in that DIBELS measure is going to help us determine how they're reading independently. And our kids right now are soaring in the 2-5 test, which is a pretty good indication that we set that bar a little too high. We shouldn't be seeing 97% of those kids knocking that assessment out of the park in the first go around. That means they probably could have moved to it sooner. We need to see them grappling with complex text at grade level so that we know what they're ready to learn next, and we know how to intervene if they're not there yet.
So it sounds like, just to set this or play back, I guess what you told me, what you said earlier is going forward, your view is you're going to move, presumably you're figuring this out now for next year. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I think that we may be able to make some adjustments for the last, the spring administration of this year as well.
Got it. And would you be concerned about making those adjustments, again, relative to like your ability to have a data set that you can rely on?
No, I'm not concerned about that. We've been adjusting students in the second grade window between the K2 and the 2-5 test for the last 2 years. So they're growing into the 2-5 test, so to speak.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had kids and I didn't know that 2-5 difference was read to you versus, you know.
But the important point that Karen made is it's not just always read in the K to 2. It's a gradual release.
And that, I didn't know that it was the gradual release either. So.
But you did know that you had to buy headphones every year.
That's why you do the supply box, because they just. Any other questions or observations for Karen?
That's great.
Yeah.
Really, congratulations.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Great.
guys.
Thank you, everybody. And pass our thanks to your colleagues as well across the school.
Yes, they deserve it.
Yes. Okay.
Send Pam the cheat sheet for the 6 types of syllables.
No, who knew that?
You know, honestly though, it's incredible because you could ask a 6th grader and they'll teach a 2nd grader and they'll teach it to you. Like they'll go through the rules with you. It's really
I know, but that's just first of all, I was thinking that's a lot of rules.
Yeah.
I mean, There seem to be a lot of rules to that.
And we just do it automatically and we don't even know, we never like name
Break
the
all the
rules. Yeah,
No.
yeah. Oh, that's English for you.
Yeah. Well, that's a visual learner as opposed to an auditory learner.
Let's move to some budget savings and a van purchase.
Did you want to do the budget deliberation?
I'm sorry, I was going through the reordering of the scale. Yes, okay. Let's do budget deliberation, workshop, recap, and budget questions. We had 3 workshops, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th, and they went through each cost center. And we're gonna have some board members give us recaps of each of the workshops to kind of engage us all in a discussion and highlight what was happening across the workshops. And we can start with the January 15th.
You wanna go first?
Please start.
Do you want us to go school by school?
However if you want to do it in the order that it went through, that first workshop was, Miller Driscoll or School Cider Mill and Middlebrook.
Those
Yeah.
are the budgets that I looked at mostly. From just an overview, they certainly presented thoughtful budgets that really were pretty emphasizing professional development and a lot of sort of in the weeds kind of learning for the staff. All 3 schools seem to really value more professional development, more learning about what their work is. And I thought that was a really smart thing for them to do, if they're doing the Middlebrook is doing executive functioning. And there's a Norton Gillingham teacher coming to Miller Driscoll, and Cider Mill is doing a lot of sort of EL work. I was very impressed with the thought that these teachers are gonna get what they need to do their work. And so they all came in budget, they all were, there's a DBT work being done in both Cider Mill and Miller Driscoll that probably is gonna be helpful, if not influential, if not something pretty needed and pretty good, I think. And so the contract services I was looking at were the professional learning. There's an what did I say? For interpreters, the ESY, is there an ESY?
We've added a line in the budget for interpreters,
Right.
because we're required to provide
Yes.
interpreters for families whose
Yes.
dominant language.
No, is not English, and I thought that was a pretty great thing to do, pretty smart thing to do.
We're required to.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, but
Fulfilling it well.
yes, we're fulfilling it. I'll let you-
Okay, yeah, the other thing that I noticed as a theme throughout the 3 schools was a increased awareness of wellness and the need for mental health support in the lower grades. So that was encouraging to see that was going to be addressed. I know Cider Mill really centered on facility infrastructure and specialized behavioral support. Those were their key factors. And Middlebrook had a mix of urgent facility repairs and deferral of some of the academic roles in order for everyone to come in under budget. What else?
You had
For
the
Miller.
smallest increase was at Middlebrook. In terms of.
Thank you for noticing.
That was the smallest increase, well, and I don't know,
And no staff change, right? You didn't talk about- No staff change.
no staff changes.
Miller had a couple of staff changes. They're bringing in social worker support and I forget who. One of your biggest expenses we noticed were your ELA textbooks and workbooks for this year.
Yeah.
So I think that was a theme throughout as well, is in order to support some of these curriculums, they need materials.
Every year, I suspect.
That's about it. for the highlights. You good, Pam?
Yeah.
Got it all?
Thank you. I'm glad about Dora Gillingham. I think that's a really great thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the combination of Doran Gillingham and then the BCBA at Cider Mill. And then the pilot program at Miller Driscoll with the DBT and wellness.
I actually looked at one of the videos for the DBT. They're quite engaging. And I don't know how effective they are, for the younger kids, but I did watch a couple and think that, with enough support, it probably could be very effective for kids that are sort of unregulated or struggling with that regulation.
It dovetails very nicely too with what the regular classroom teachers do with the everyday student,
Yeah,
so.
so all those words, are translated from the to there, yeah. I thought they were quite effective and sort of cute and not ponderous, which could have happened.
I think one of the things that I also noticed is like, to some extent, the stability in this budget. Like some years we've come to and what's in the budget is in order to implement a new program. And like this year, I know Kathy and, Janine, I'm sure has said this too, like, can we have a year with nothing new? And I feel like this is, this year kind of represents a building year, a stability year of, keeping resources at a place where we can keep diving in further into the curriculum changes that we've already need and stabilizing and growing without adding anything on top of it. So I know that's something that at least I appreciated for this year.
Except for the new van.
Well, that's, outside of.
That's coming in cost savings.
Yeah, that's a cost savings.
Can I just ask what a kitchen repair, all three budgets had a deferred?
In the culinary kitchen, in the kitchens that Chartwell's use, some of the equipment's aging, and so we started 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we added $10,000 across the kitchen, across each school rather. We lowered that a little bit this year because as part of the Chartwell's contract, they're going to be providing an infusion of like new or updated hardware as part of their contract.
Okay.
Patrick and Mark?
Yeah.
Take on the next workshop.
Absolutely. So we'll provide a readout of the January 22nd workshop, which covered Wilton High School, the athletics department, and special education. So Mark, I'll hit in a couple of these if you want to talk to any of these as well, but I'll give my thoughts first. I'll actually start on the athletic department side. So Bobby presented a budget that represented, an increase in athletic department expenditure. I think first of all, it was important, and Bobby noted in his comments that 60% of high school students are participating in some form of programming from the athletic department. So it's one that serves a broad spectrum of the student body. One key addition was the addition of boys varsity volleyball. The choice that was also on the table of adding JV as well, that was deferred to subsequent years, but there seemed to be a lot of excitement and sign up and participation in boys volleyball. So that got added to the varsity lineup. There was also some cost increase for uniform rotations, so they always try to replace some portion of the uniform inventory across sports. So this year I think it was lacrosse and golf were two of the sports that are seeing some uniform replacement. There's also some upgrades to some of the infrastructure, specifically around some of the carts that they use on premises. I remember I had a good joke around the cost of the batteries in each of those. So I think those are some of the larger cost drivers on the athletics side. They're in terms of like offsets. I think Bobby broke the news that potentially we're bringing back the Thanksgiving football game, which Kevin learned as well in the moment, which was fun. We're hopeful that that'll bring some more,
Is that with Richfield?
gate revenues.
Yes.
Which should be good. I think those were some of the key drivers. I think overall it represented a 4% increase to the athletic school budget to the tune of I think $75,000 if I have that number correct. Just short of $76,000. There were also some other sports that are seeing some slowdown in participation. So there's going to be some careful deliberation and review of whether we continue to offer those sports or not. And some of those where the participation is declining are some of the more expensive to support. So there's going to be some hard decisions and discussions to be had there. I think those were some of the highlights from the athletic department. Anything else, Mark, that you recall? Anybody else on the athletic department side?
No, I think that it's great that we've gotten to a system of uniform rotation that has kind of been smooth and stabilized. So we don't see, we're seeing very big spikes year to year, and that rotation has been smoothed out. So I think that that's brought great stability and efficiency to the budget. And I think this is the first year that I haven't heard laments over the cost of transportation. So I think that's kind of been smoothed out and reconciled a little bit too. Those both are welcome.
Yeah, the other piece I would add, like uniforms, Bobby also developed a multi-year equipment replacement schedule. And so in addition to what I was doing with the golf balls, purchasing replacement track and field nets.
Perfect. All right, so we'll move on to the high school. So Dr. O'Donnell and Mr. Keating covered everything for the high school. That budget, and I can't remember if this was broken out from the athletic department, but between the athletic department and the high school, it's roughly 25% of the budget. And so it's obviously a material portion. I think that and special education are the two largest, each at around a quarter of the budget. 4.65% increase. A lot of cost increase in supporting some of the new or continuing some of the new courses that were offered last year. So we're continuing to offer the audio production and podcasting. There was a lot of interest from the student body in the UConn ECE financial literacy program. So we'll continue to fund those. There was also some financial literacy investment on the just textbooks and materials side, and some of the new technology getting adopted for some of the programming at the high school. I think besides programming and supplies, there were some offsets and some reallocation of resources across different areas. I think one of the ones we spent time speaking about at the board table was just on the addition of a new dean to help with some of the assessments for some of the administration because of the kind of delineation and what folks who are part of the non-administration can and cannot do with respect to some of the teachers. So in terms of being able to assess them, so that was a big priority that Dr. O'Donnell and Mr. Keating talked about. There was also an additional 0.1 FTE for preschool paraprofessional, and then also the attendance survey, which was offset by the increase in paying for somebody to the 0.2 increase on the attendance secretary, offset by overtime that would be avoided with having to pay somebody overtime to do that work. I think we, from the discussion, I think we talked a lot around the table around just overall enrollment trends we're seeing and how that should or shouldn't, affect staffing increases and cost drivers. I think we talked and pushed a lot on cost avoidance. So, for anything we're increasing, how are we offsetting it, either by reallocating resources or line items, or I know Lori and I always ask about revenue drivers as well. So we're always interested there. I think those were the high points. Mark, anything else to add? And any other comments, questions? I hope we did you proud on that one.
Yes, great summation.
And just for clarity, the dean is is a neutral, right?
Correct. It's a reallocation.
It's a reallocation, yeah, yeah. And I know that, I think that's been a request that's come to this table almost every year that, I've been here, so.
Me too.
um,
I'm glad it happened.
So, yeah, so it's great that you were able to,
We're not done yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, people.
So thank you.
well, that you were able to, make it to this presentation point. Yes.
First hurdle.
Yes, this is
last.
the first hurdle, not the last. Yes.
Great. And I think the last area was special education. So, just over a 1% increase from the 26 budget. I think the headline here is, when we first started to review the information there, there's a 4.4 FTE increase. I think once we dug in and really understood the cost offsets there, so if you look at a 1% increase relative to a 4.4 FTE add, you kind of wonder where's the money coming from, and really it was the offset in contracted services that we were able to reallocate those funds to drive the 4.4 FTE increase. And so I know we talked a lot about making sure that for those that are watching or in the community, they really understand where the offsets are coming, because I think if folks are only looking at one number and not the other, it's important to look at all of this in context. And I know, Melissa and the team were very thoughtful about how to make this all work. So we spent a lot of time talking about that around the table and understanding really what those FTE adds were needed for. Some were for specific programming and that was required. I think there was another there was a shared resource between Genesis, I think, in the high school, if I had that correct. And so we need to make sure we maintained 4.0 at Genesis, and so we needed to bring 1.0 over to the high school, or excuse me, to the high school. And then there was also, I think, 0.6 reduction across other roles. So I think the offset, the 4.4 is net of, adding 5 and bringing things down by 0.6 FTE. And there was also some deferrals on social workers and additional pre-K support as well. Anything else you want to?
It was impressive. Big takeaways.
Okay.
Adding staff by decreasing contracted services.
There you go.
And I would just add one thing, which is beyond the fact that it was I think in some cases we talked about reallocation. In this case, it did bringing services in-house in order to support what we think we need and get some cost benefit, which I appreciate. I think the other thing that we heard about was when we were talking about shifting resources from building to building. A lot of that was driven by the needs. I think you talked a lot about executive functioning and some of the challenges you've been seeing there, and the need to continue that program into higher grades as the students roll up to those higher grades. So that was helpful.
Yeah, no, the FTE adds, but is it, reallocations, is it positions, is it actual new bodies, like working through all that can definitely be confusing and challenging, especially for those who don't follow on a regular basis. So Patrick, thank you. I think you gave a good summary and highlight of it, and I think that it'll be kind of like up to us as we move forward and whatever our budget winds up being to make sure that we have are able to provide clarity around that understanding and story. And then I think also it is, the reallocations as kids grow with programs and as those programs grow with them, even across the board, as we're seeing, even with like CLA programs, like all those different changes as needs shift through buildings and how we're able to reallocate across resources across buildings. The final workshop was a district-wide workshop, and we talked about the district office, main office. We talked about facilities. We talked about technology from both the curricular side and also from the infrastructure side. And I think the main highlights from the central office is the change of moving to what were WEA positions into WASA, so it's moving curriculum coordinators into the administrative office. Right now, it's reflecting 2 positions, which is the curriculum coordinator for mathematics, which is K through 12, and then the curriculum coordinator for the humanities K through 8, right? Those 2 positions.
And that K position, the humanities position, would become a K-12 position.
Oh, it would become a K-12 position. So, that dollar amount of $79,000 represents moving those 2 positions to not only have from a 10-month position to a 12-month position. So it'll allow the work to continue at a deeper level year-round. It also provides for a supervisory role, and it also gives further vertical integration between for a full K-12 program. So I think especially as we see the changes that we've made in our programs and are making, and as we move towards more complicated and instructional practices, I think that it's something that as this board deliberates on it, its potential I think is merited as something for us to look at. We also should note that there was an increase of $47,000 and change for one of the school resource officers. So one of the resource officers lives on our budget and the other one lives in the town budget. So we cover the salary. And now we will also be covering their health benefits, and that's for
The fully loaded cost.
so it's the fully loaded cost now. And I think that something that I've always kind of queered about is our health costs. Our health costs are lower than the town's plan, so that's something that leaves me questioning. Also, we carry that resource officer and pay their fully loaded class for a 12-month salary, but they work as a resource officer for us only 10 months out of the year. So I think it's something that keep in mind and be thoughtful of as we move forward, with this budget and other budgets, in terms of looking at costs. We've made some changes in our finance department restructuring, and that's an increase that meets out to a $27,000 about change. We're no longer sharing a CFO with town, and we have Lila in this new position. And we added a 0.6 payroll AP clerk, and that's all. It's related to our finance department efficiencies. We had a decrease in contractual services. We had an increase repairs and maintenance and building support for about $125,000. We have 4 buildings, and 3 of them are aging, and their systems are coming to end of life. And while we are working, we talked about earlier about a larger facilities plan, and while we're working to have a cohesive and comprehensive program to address some of these as they fall apart and need babysitting, this is our responsibility to make sure that our buildings maintain their safety and their health. But we have this great savings with BOE vehicles, and we'll learn more about that in addition later. We went through contract services and what the large contracts are in the district, and what when they their time frame and when they run, and what their larger drivers are and when they're up for renewal. So you'll notice that the Novus, which is the managed technology services, is the largest, and it comes in over a little bit over $1.2 million, and that is all our technology infrastructure and the personnel associated with managing it. And then we have Chartwell's food services. We just went out to RFP and had a revised contract with them, and that'll run 25 through 28. We just recently also re-upped with STA Transportation after managing a cost project with that and a bidding process with that. And that contract will now run through 2030, and you see the new school buses on the road this year. We contract with Interstate Waste Services for trash removal, and the contract years for that is 23, 28. For those who know, it was Oak Ridge, and so now it's Interstate Waste Services. There was a buyout in between then, so people are looking for contracts and names. That's a change. We have a contract for our copiers that runs about $235,000, and that will be up in 2027. And then we will be going out to bid on waiving for nursing services. Currently, nursing services, and for I think at least the last 10 years or so, have been covered, are paid for a line item on the town side of the budget. We've discussed over the last couple of years about moving that line item over to the school side, because most of the management of the lives on the school end, and that it would be worked as considered a just a I guess you could call it just like a line item swap. So it would have a budget neutral effect, and we would go out to RFP and for those services. But I do expect that, and I'm hopeful that when we go out to RFP, we can come up with a contract that's more in our favor than the one that we have now. And then we carry 2 leases for our Genesis program, which is currently at Trackside for $120,000, and the Community Steps, which is in has that lovely new space in Town Center, and that runs it a little bit at $66,000. We've seen some increases in need for digital services and digital leases. And we're managing a curating process of those, and some questions were asked about, what licenses come in and what licenses come out, and how we manage that process. And I think that really covers that end. So I mean, we've just kind of went through all the different cost centers. We've seen the major drivers. I think some of the themes for this year's budget, at least what for emerging for me, is that it's really a stabilizing year, and it's a year of really, I think, thoughtful, you make some thoughtful ideas about how we reallocate our services and the resources that we have now, how we make sure that we're as efficient as we can be, and keep on looking for more efficiencies as we move along. It's it's a lot to digest all at once. And I don't know if anybody, we can go through, I don't know if anybody, there's the question document, it's available online. You can see things that members have asked, looking at ideas from enrollment to particular curriculum choices that are reflected in the budget, to noting that there was a letting go of a summer program that was not being used to the efficiency and the utilization rate that would warrant maintaining it. So I don't know if there's any particular area that, any particular question that you would like us to call out or discuss further, or members want to talk about. We can go around the table. People can.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me, there's nothing in particular in that document, and what I would just, continue to offer as you are, diving through the budget materials, really 2 things. As questions emerge, please, keep sending them, and or respond. This process is intended to be ongoing. And then second, this is our first time using ClearGov, and so if you have thoughts about how we might do a better job of presenting information more clearly, or if there's information that's not present that it should be, anything on the documents would be helpful. A couple of times tonight, it was mentioned that it's important to really be clear about FTE allocation and offsets, and so that was in my presentation. It's here, but listening to the questions over the last 3 weeks, I'm in it, so it makes sense to me. But if you're seeing it for the first time, it takes a little bit to unpack, and so if you have some recommendations about how we might be able to present that more cleanly for yourselves, for others who are not going to do the same deep dive, then I'd welcome them.
Any other kind of thoughts as we move forward? I mean, from my perspective, there are some things that I'm still, looking at, thinking about, marinating on. I think that overall, it is thoughtfully put together, and it advances the priorities and the goals as we laid out earlier in the fall. And I think that there's still there's still things that are being deferred, or things that are not being advanced that I'm sure that we would all like to see, and there are choices to be made when you're limited with your overall resources. And so I invite any type of other thoughts or comments from other members on the table, or observations.
One observation, which is, the point of the format, it is far easier. It could be better, but far better than what it was in the past.
Agreed.
Like already a step forward. And then one thing that just, I know like the governor just proposed his budget and was talking about that, and one of the things that was in it was universal breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I think we should give some thought to like the implication. I don't know if that means we have to open school buildings earlier, if that has other implications for our district, that we should, he's raised it before, it has to get through, there's no guarantee, but it's like having some contingency plan would probably be worthwhile.
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
It's that governor's not thinking about the
unfunded
districts that don't participate in the national school lunch program. But well noted.
Or whether it'll be a fully funded endeavor.
He's proposed 12.5 million for the state, but
Yeah. It was an interesting idea. I mean, I watched his delivery and thought, how's that gonna work?
well, that is the essence of my question. If it goes through, how it works. And again, I generally advise us against over planning for things that still might not happen. But
yeah, we keep an eye on it. I think that as I've been thinking about that, that's as much a philosophical question as a financial question, right? And I think we provide, we're mandated to provide lots of other services, transportation. Why don't we provide breakfast and lunch? The kids are here 6.5 hours a day, some a lot longer. I'm not recommending today that that's something that Wilton Board of Ed takes on, but it's a question, it's a choice. It's a choice we can make locally. Yeah. And so if that you decide that's also important to us, then that's something we should talk about. But I think much recommendation.
No, and I think that also goes to the larger, when we talk about a budget being a reflection of what our, morals and values and expectations are, that's the way the philosophy fits in. Like, we don't have unlimited resources and we don't have unlimited time. So there are, priorities and choices to be made that not everybody will have a different set. And coming to a place that, overall reflects where we want to be and where we're moving to. And I think that's pretty incredible. I think that like 60% of the high school takes up athletics. And I don't think that has really, sat with me to that point.
as it did. It just resonated with me, particularly this year as we look at things and what what constitutes a full education. We'll keep your questions coming in as you keep on going through it. We'll be meeting with the Board of Finance on Tuesday. They've had a limited set of questions come in thus far. I think there was just a few overview questions. So I have reached out again and encouraged them to, if there's any final questions that they have, to bring them to us sooner rather than later, so we can be prepared and have a productive and meaningful conversation.
When we were on this morning with Kim and Prasad, Kim is the newcomer to the Board of Finance, was curious about how that meeting unfolded, and so just kind of recap for her. It's relatively informal. It's a conversation. In previous years, I've been the primary provider of information. I certainly don't need to be, but as I've been thinking about it today, if we have questions for the Board of Finance, really is intended to be a two-way conversation, not a one-way interrogation, of our budget or me or the board or whatever. And I'm encouraged by the openness in the communication that we've experienced in the last couple of years, and we should use next Tuesday as another moment to continue to expand that. So I would invite, if you have questions for them that you want to get into, you can send those to me or to Ruth, and we'll push them on to Tim.
That's well said, because it is a conversation and not,
Yeah.
Okay. So, and just also so everybody knows, as any additional questions come in, as we continue to deliberate, the question document is a living document, so it will be updated accordingly and then reposted and available online. Now we can get to the van purchase.
Okay. So hopefully no surprises here. We've been talking about it for a while. We have proof of concept this year. As you know, we purchased a van at the end of fiscal 25. We hired a driver in fiscal 26. We collapsed a couple of runs, and we're operating that van at about $240 a day, which is significantly less than the runs that had been provided to us through a third-party contracted service. And so kind of following in the spirit of that effort, I'm proposing to you that we purchase a second van. We have money in this current budget to actually buy the van as a result of the savings we've experienced with the van and the driver this year. And then as we move into fiscal 27, we hire a driver. The runs that we propose to collapse. Two, there's a homeschool run for Genesis, there's a midday run, and then, there's a Genesis midday run, a Genesis Friday run, and a Community Steps homeschool run. The total of those are about $120,000. The total cost of operating the van with the driver would be just over $88,000, and so there's an anticipated net savings of just above $30,000. And so,
Do the community steps kids are picked up and then delivered in town and then picked up and taken home?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, and Genesis, some Genesis kids.
And Genesis too. I didn't know community steps did it as well.
Yeah. So if that all makes sense to you, what I would ask for is a motion to purchase a second van, hire a driver, as is stipulated in this memo, and then we'll march forward.
Could I just ask one thing? So why is the savings so much lower with van 2 than it was with van 1?
The cost of the driver, the current driver, doesn't take insurance, and so we're just paying salary. We're estimating the full cost of we're including up to family insurance in the estimated cost of the second driver. And so her.
Got it, so
Personnel
that
costs
was
is
like this
So it
driver
might wind up
is a
being
fully
a
loaded
greater,
cost.
yeah.
Correct. So, so if we have a cheaper driver, you see more savings.
But you're still predicting a $90,000, well, you're saying that you're saying you're currently saving $140,000. Like the driver fully loaded is only $80,000. And yet
It was the runs that we picked up.
Yeah, so
did
we,
you just go
yeah,
for the
so
higher cost runs before?
well, so before the van number 1 replaced more runs than van number 2 is replacing.
Got it.
So that's why you'll see a little bit of a,
So just a marginal.
yeah.
Okay. And what's the expected useful life of a van with the load we're putting on it?
I don't have the answer to that.
Well, I think it would depend on how well it's maintained and how many miles we actually end up putting on it. You know, it's our first year into it, so we don't really know how many miles we're gonna have at the end of the year. I'd be able to give you a better estimate probably at the end of the year.
Because this savings number is just the OpEx, right? It doesn't include the cost of the van itself. Is that right? Or are you carrying that?
So that you no, it's not the cost of purchasing the van. That is the maintenance, the fuel.
Right, so like $30,000 per year of savings, and you're gonna spend 67 on the van, then it takes 2 years to pay back the van.
Yeah.
With the savings, and then after that, so as long as the van you're getting 3+ years out of the van, it's
Yeah.
a reasonable.
Right.
I just wanted.
And I would think reasonably, you're
I
gonna
would
get
hope
probably
so.
Let's call
10
it
years
5 to
out of
Just wanna.
that van, but because they're,
We're not
right
buying used
now, they're
vans or-
doing in-town driving, so they're not putting a ton of miles on the van. So I'm thinking we could very easily get 10 years out of the van, but I don't know if at that point then the cost of maintaining the van might become expensive. It's
Right,
hard to
at some point the
project
maintenance
that at
costs
this
will start
point,
to
but
be-
it's definitely gonna be a cost savings. And the van, we have 67,095 on here, but it'll actually be 66,000 because I was able to get the cost down a little bit.
And you and I have to buy a car from you.
And do we take that full cost up front from an accounting perspective, or do we? We can't spread it out over.
If we're paying for it in this year, it counts in this year.
Yeah. Okay.
Cash and carry.
Exactly. I know.
School budgets live in a different world.
That's right.
Any other questions for Kevin on the van?
Are there any other potential routes that wouldn't be covered that we would consider? Is there a third one in the works?
I think what's hard about that is we're picking up home to school runs, and so the law is wonky. If you pick a kid up at home, then you're restricted to like a 10-passenger van. If you're only doing like in-district circulation or something, it's 15 passenger. Do I have that right? And so we're limited.
With the types of runs that we can or can't.
Yeah. I mean, we have other out-of-district runs that we could look at if we wanted to kind of continue this model. But those, they're not always the same runs every single year.
And on that, I guess the last thing on that front, or maybe not the last thing, but the other thing that brings to mind, are we locked into this in a way that, like for instance, if we buy the van, we could sell the van with some depreciation. But does the driver become a staff member that then, if we decide we want to unwind this, there's severance costs and things we have to factor in, or is this a reversible decision?
No, I mean, it's an at-will employee, so it's not a person that is in a unionized environment, where we have any sort of responsibility outside of the agreement. But just like any employee, there could be unemployment that comes into play. It's not a huge cost. It's a fairly low level of commitment. Obviously, we have commitment to all of our employees, but when you have at-will employees, it's a less of a long-term expectation.
Yeah, the reason I ask is like often when you're doing contracted services, right, they tend to be more expensive, but you can shut them off with no recourse, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out like to what extent is this a reversible decision versus a.
Well, we have an agreement with people through the year, essentially. So at the end of each year, we revisit that. And so I think it's reversible for sure. If we decided to walk away from this and go back to contracting out with ECS or some of the other providers that we've used, we could certainly do that. We have the van, but these are essentially 1-year commitments that we have.
Right.
And I think just on that note too, our population
was
estimates
just gonna-
suggest that,
right.
we should be able to sustain this model, just given the kids that we have and are coming through the pipeline.
Our projections for both of those programs are looking to stay steady or grow. And I also just think the quality of service we've been able to provide using our own transportation definitely brings a higher level of care and consistency for the kids.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to purchase a second van and hire a driver as stipulated in the February 5th briefing memo before us?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Patrick. All in favor? Aye. Carries unanimously. Well done, everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you, and well, good negotiating, Lila, so thank you.
I'll keep it up.
Yeah, any other places you want to negotiate, feel free. Okay, we already did that. We have a first read of a new policy, 5118.2, educational opportunities for military children.
Great, so this is a new policy, it's a mandated policy. This emerged last summer when we received the CAVE audit of our policies. The intention of this policy is to ease the transition between schools and communities for children of active members of the military. And so it specifies a number of things. One, the expedited sending and receiving of records. It allows a 30-day window for catching up with immunizations. It demands that receiving schools, honor placement recommendations from the sending school, and then for students whose families, because of a military placement, may have to leave town mid-year, it provides that the student's allowed to stay, and if the student is junior in high school, the student can finish his or her high school career here, even if the family has to move as a result of the military deployment.
This went through the policy committee, it's been through legal review and was flagged through our audit system. So this is a first look for all our policies. They come to the table twice, first as a review and discuss, and provided that there's no flags raised, it doesn't go back to the policy committee, it'll come back to this table at the next meeting. And so I don't know if anybody has any questions about this right now, or they can send them in through me and Kevin in advance of the next meeting.
One quick one, if there's a typo in your deployment definition relative to the general statute, just as a comma instead of the word to. I don't know if that feels important.
Oh, gotcha. Yep. Yes, it is.
So otherwise the deployment term would not be working.
Yeah, thank you. Our elementary children thank us also.
Okay, so we'll have this back at the table for approval at the next meeting. As I highlighted earlier, the next one on the agenda was the selection of school library materials, and it came through the policy committee, and I would ask for a motion actually to table this discussion on this item, as we noticed that there was additional cleanup needed after the agenda had already gone out, and an inclusion of an appendix and some other items. So if I could have a motion to table this item, please. Thank you. Lori, is there a second? Thank you, Mark. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this will go back to the policy committee and find its way back
to the table. And now we go to possible action items, and we have a second read and possible vote on the policy number 514412, which is challenging behavior prevention, restorative practices, response, and student discipline. Should be noted that this language is mandated by statute. So our language reflects that mandate and has also been through legal review, and it's now at the table for the second read. Are there any questions, concerns, or discussions about this policy? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve policy 514412, challenging behavior prevention?
So moved.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second? Thank you, Lori. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Comments from the public? Just please state your name and address for the record and your remarks to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Lindsay McKay, 87 Old Kings Highway. Thank you very much. Sorry, I was a few minutes late to this meeting because I had my son's 4th grade winter concert tonight. It was amazing. And I just want to say thank you for all you do. Obviously, you cover lots of ground, from bands to medical families and everything in between. Thank goodness I learned to read when I was at Miller, because wow, that sounded really complicated. And I am a proud Wilton grad myself, and really exciting to hear all the positive changes from the new reading program. I just also want to follow up on an email that I sent to the Board of Ed, and then as a follow-up I met with Kathy and Karen, and just in regards to the MAP testing, I think it's something that's really important that we take a very close look at, because this article from 2020 from NWEA says the scenario to avoid using MAP growth K-2 for all second graders, that's in caps and all bold. We strongly caution against, which is italicized, against giving all second grader students the MAP growth K-2 test because they listened to it. So my son, who I just said is in 4th grade, when he was in 2nd grade, so only 2 years ago, the entire grade took the K-2 MAP test. And those numbers do not accurately reflect their reading. And I think everyone in this room wants kids to, to help them if they're struggling. And we need to look at the tests that we are giving our youngest students in order to decrease the gap. As in the Good Morning Wilton article on this Board of Ed meeting and back in September, it was commented on how the gap just doesn't seem to be decreasing year after year. And if we're looking at the SBUS scores, which are taken at the end of 3rd grade, that's way too late. I mean, it needs to be addressed earlier. And then also in this article from 2020, the ideal situation is if we could treat every student individually, which, that is a huge feat. But it also says, we recommend giving the MAP growth K-2 test to 2nd graders who are clearly not yet ready to read independently. And all evidence suggests they won't be reading independently at any point during their 2nd grade year. So based on what Wilton just did on the answers to the Board of Ed questions that just came out, number 6, only roughly 37% of 2nd grade in the winter is taking this 2 to 5 test. So you're telling me only 37% of 2nd graders are expected to be able to read independently by the end of 2nd grade? The new data that came out, or guidance from NWEA, I would argue is actually applied to 1st graders, because it says in the intro when to switch for 2nd grade and high performing 1st graders. So I think thankfully we are now doing dibbles for the very first time, 3 times a year, K-3, first time that Wilton is doing this. Thankfully, we're also doing RAN, which is a dyslexia indicator, so we can catch these kids in kindergarten or in 1st grade. And also, no matter what they're struggling with, we can catch them sooner, and then hopefully they're an intervention for a shorter period of time. And the only reason we are doing dibbles is because of the state mandate. I want to point out that in the questions from the Board of Ed number 13 about interventionists, it says the interventionists have remained fairly stable over the past 5 years. They've actually increased. Miller Driscoll 2 years ago went from a 3.0 to a 3.8 for interventionists at Miller Driscoll. And in Cider Mill just this year went from a 3.4 to a 4.5. And the previous budgets show the 5-year gap, and so it shows that those are recent increases because our kids are struggling and they need help. I think we're on a much better path. I also want to point out that New Canaan dropped the K-2 test entirely in 2018. And their second grade kids, they all take the 2 to 5. In Norwalk, an Alliance school, second graders all take the 2 to 5. The state dropped the K-2 as a recommended assessment because it doesn't catch decoding issues, which is a huge part of reading. My son is a perfect example. He was so far behind in the beginning of 3rd grade. The state dropped it because and it shows the 2 to 5, those projections are accurate. And then you also don't have this huge dip between the K-2 and the 2 to 5. I mean, you want to look at your growth of a second grader, and you would hope that they're learned to read independently by the end of 2nd grade in a place like Wilton. So I think I don't understand why 2 years ago my son, the entire grade took the K-2, even though that article is from 2020. I think 37% of our second graders only taking the 2 to K for the winter. I think we can do a lot better. And we can use the data, and I feel like Wilton is very slow to these changes, and we've made a lot of progress, and we still have a lot to go. So, and that's a lot of work for our teachers, and the sooner we catch struggling students, the faster we help them. Dr. Charles Smith sent me an article March 8th, 2024. It was about dyslexia, which a lot of it I
Lindsay, can I just ask you to
didn't agree with, but the one part I did agree with was that intervention in kindergarten and 1st grade is more effective than in later grades. So, and that's whether dyslexic or not. So I just hope that Wilton continues to pay attention to the assessments, and that we use that data and pay attention to the history over what's been done in time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? None online? Nope. Okay. And just for our future business, again, we will be meeting with the Board of Finance on this coming Tuesday at the 10th at 7 o'clock. And we'll have a regular meeting on February 26th and again on March 5th and then again on March 19th. Meeting adjourned